I wanted you to be aware of a development that goes counter to the number of companies that are just writing off Russia. Right now, two of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges on the planet, Coinbase and Binance, have rejected calls on a blanket ban for all Russian users to stop their platforms from being used as a way around Western sanctions. Their argument goes something like this, that whatever you think about Russia, and despite the invasion of Ukraine, they believe that this would come back and hit people who should have access to the very things that other powerful players of the planet have, and that a blanket ban would hurt them. I think that's the gist of it. But who better to talk about it than the CEO of Binance, Changpeng Zhao? Changpeng, thank you for joining us. You and Coinbase are in this camp, and I think I understand why that this would do more harm. That is, in other words, just cutting off all crypto ties with Russia. But since the powers that be, the oligarchs and Vladimir Putin, could use cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin in particular, as an end run around sanctions, don't you risk helping him?
Thanks for having me here. So first of all, I want to make one strong clarification. We follow all the sanction rules. It's not that we didn't sanction the Russian users, oligarchs that's on the sanction list. It's not governments calling for this. It's journalists and also other people calling for our businesses to make a blanket ban on all Russian users who are not on the sanction list published by the US government. So we feel that as a business, we don't have the power to do that. We should not have the ability to say, hey, we're going to freeze this Russian guy's account. It is a normal Russian user, maybe walking the streets of New York or London.
How would you know that, Changpeng? That's I guess what I'm asking, excuse my ignorance. How would you know who the user is, whether that particular user is a Russian oligarch, Vladimir Putin, or just an everyday man and woman who's just investing in crypto?
Sure. So there are very mature, sophisticated ways to do KYC, AML, anti-money laundering, CFT, etc. So we use all the same tools, same processes the banks use. And the banks are, so normal Russian, so there's a very strong distinction here. I think there's a misunderstanding that people think we don't sanction the people on the sanction list. That would be bad. That people go to jail for, people will go to jail for that. So we follow the sanction list very, very closely. Banks do not sanction, banks do not block normal Russian users, and we don't do that either. So we're doing exactly the same thing as banks. It's not that banks sanction Russian users and we don't. That's completely not true. And that's a misunderstanding that seems to be propagated even today, yeah.
All right, but how do you know people aren't finding ways around it? There's always this talk, and this has happened, one of the arguments for regulating the crypto arena is that nefarious types can get around it. It could be used for money laundering. It could be used for, oligarchs finding a way around sanctions. How do you know that's not happening?
Sure. So this problem does not only apply to crypto exchanges, it applies to banks as well. And there's an established process on how to determine politically exposed persons, PEPs, including their principals, their lawyers, their family members, and what they call their mules, people that they use to try to open accounts for them. They are very sophisticated techniques on how to do this, including IP association, device signature. There's a whole slew of technology that's used by the banks and by us. And actually, probably many of the crypto exchanges use more advanced methods, including blockchain analysis for fund transfers, which are typically provided by firms like Chain Analysis, Elliptic, etc. So this is not a crypto specific problem. Every bank has to do this determination as well. Anybody who opens a bank account, anybody who opens an account on Binance, we go through the same determination process.
So again, just to pursue this, Ross Delson is a former banking regulator, and he talked to Reuters on this, saying that there's, quote, no question that sanctions are diminished when you allow an avenue for flight to safety that would not have existed otherwise. He's adding that cryptocurrencies, not what you do specifically, Changpeng, but provide that opportunity. Do you have the power, if you wanted to to cut off Russia entirely, including average everyday users? Or is it that you just don't think that's appropriate?
I think that's criminal to be for a business to do that, to confiscate people's money. That's saying, like, look, a bank CEO in the UK or in New York, they probably have a Russian user, and they're just going to take their money away. And that user is not on a sanction list by the government. It's just a businessman, a business CEO, just because he may not agree with the president of a country, he's going to confiscate funds from all citizens of that country. What if the next day that CEO disagrees with some other head of state in some other country? Does he have the power to confiscate funds from their customers? I think that's a criminal offense. That's a criminal activity in most places. If you take your customers' money away without cause, just because you disagree with the views of the other country's president, and so sanctions are very senior. Sanction lists are very serious decisions made by very senior levels of government. And mostly by the U.S. government, to be very frank. So we don't view that as a business owner or operator. We have the authority to confiscate people's funds when they are not on the sanction list of any country.
All right. Changpeng, thank you for coming on, maybe trying to clarify a lot of this stuff. Changpeng Zhao is the CEO of Binance, along with Coinbase, among some of the biggest players, market exchanges, if you will, for want of a simpler term, on the planet when it comes to these crypto investments.